Friday, everyone. Happy Friday. Friday's payday around here. Hope you guys are doing well. Real quick mic check. There we go. All right, guys, we're going to jump right into the charts, get started right away see if we can get through this before the opening bell. And that opening bell's in exactly 21 minutes. Good morning. All right, jumping right into the charts. Let's get started. All right, so I'm going to focus in on the daily chart. And the first thing that I want to point out that's prevalent to me is this descending trend line. It's coming in today at 68.74. We're currently trading 68.72. Now, trend lines aren't perfect, but so we haven't breached that trend line. I think that we'll find out here at the open whether that trend line is going to hold or not. But it's a pretty significant trend line. And for me, if we can breach this trend line, and if this trend line becomes a non-issue, such as we open today and we have an opening drive and we're blasting right through it higher on a good CPI print, then this recovery here from the 63.53 low starts to take on a look similar to last April. Right, where it was just a V type recovery and it was a strong move straight to the upside and straight to retest the prior all-time high. So I think that we'll find out a lot today about whether this recovery has legs and whether we're going to retest the all-time high, or whether the market's going to come in here and kind of digest the move off the low. I think we need to point out also that we do have a good catalyst this morning on a better than expected CPI print. So just keep that in mind. All right, jumping into the hourly chart. So we had highlighted yesterday that we had this overhead supply area highlighted in this gray rectangle. And the one thing that stands out immediately is that we kind of we pulled back on our first test from it. And then yesterday, after the open, after price settled in, we blasted off and we traded right above it and right into the upper trend line, to the descending trend line. If you measure the all-time high 70.43 down to the 63.53 low, the last hope for bears is this 78.6 retracement of that move. This 78.6 retracement has held on the daily on larger time frames in the past. I recall last year when we had a significant decline and we were going to test the all-time high again. We hit the 78.6 and we pulled back for a few days. So I guess we'll see if that's going to hold true. That 77.86 of the decline comes in at 68.96. All right, let's get a little bit more granular and jump into the 15-minute chart and figure out what our plan is for today. So currently, we're opening in the upper part of yesterday's range. So if we opened right here, we would be opening within yesterday's range, just below the high, just below yesterday's high, and just below value area high. Overnight high comes in at 68.88. and price is now testing 68.74. So I think the question is the overnight inventory short or long? And when you look at just the amount of prints that we have above and below the settlement, I think it's fair to say that the overnight inventory is neutral. So I don't think we can discern much edge from that. On the 15-minute, prices trailing the 9 period moving average pretty tightly. It just acted as support, and you can see that the 21 as well acted as support. So the question is, do we open up on a gap up open, and do we open for the bull argument? Do we open gap higher, open drive, and immediately go test the overnight high? Being that the overnight inventory is neutral, that would be a big tell, right? So that would kind of signify that, hey, the CPI print, the news was bullish, and it's and buyers are back active in the market, and not only are they active, but they're being super aggressive. And if we can sustain the move higher and get above the overnight high, or do something like this, if we have an opening drive based on neutral overnight inventory, and that move higher breaches the overnight high, and that overnight high holds on a pullback, I think that provides us a pretty good opportunity based on the context that, hey, A, the overnight inventory was neutral, and B, that we had an opening drive based on a positive CPI print. The descending trend line is not going to hold as resistance, and it's game on to the upside. And I think at that point, buying a pullback to the overnight high, or maybe even a pullback to yesterday's high. So say that price rallies strongly and holds above yesterday's high. So say we open, we come back down, we open gap higher, we come back down, we close the gap at yesterday's high, and price and yesterday's high and value area high start to act as support, then that provides us another long opportunity, targeting the overnight high first, and then seeing what our runner would seeing and leaving a runner on to see if we get a trend day to the upside. On the bearish side, say that price opens right here just above yesterday's high, and we get a strong move down that tests the settlement, and it cuts right through the settlement, right through the Globex open. At that point, any retracement to yesterday's high or to the settlement, whichever comes first, gauging the tone and the strength of the momentum of the move, I think will probably provide us an entry into a short position to go back and test this distribution from yesterday. The volume point of control comes in at 68.63. Settlement is 68.63. So that's going to be a big tell. If we open, we immediately drive lower and cut through settlement and volume point and the volume point of control. If those start to act as support, then we can grab a continuation long to the upside. However, if price breaches and comes through there with strength and momentum and cuts through the Globex open, then I would think that it's on to the downside. And all of these, that would put all of these buyers from yesterday, from late day yesterday, that would put them on notice, right? That would immediately be liquidation mode. And we could start thinking about testing the overnight low and maybe getting into these single prints from yesterday. Let's just see where those single prints line up. Okay, so yesterday's single print start at 68.47. Our overnight low comes in at 68.50. So do we open gap? Do we open immediately, get through this, test the settlement, cut through it, cut through the Globex open, and retest the overnight low at 68.50, followed by a test of those single prints at 68.47? And does that give us an opportunity for a look below and fail? So say something like this, right? Say we come down, we open in the upper part of yesterday's range, right? That would immediately have all the late day buyers from yesterday kind of on notice. That would be forcing action for them. So do these guys get liquidated and get stopped out? The logical place for those stops to be is right just below yesterday's overnight low. Yesterday's pullback low came in just below that at 68.47. So those single prints held really well. And if we get into those single prints with strength and momentum, I would think that that move, if we don't, so say we open up, we test below the Globex open, test below overnight low, come back up here, say we retrace that move somewhat and find resistance either below the settlement or the volume point of control, and price is unable to get back above there, then I would think that the target then becomes a move lower to go retest those single prints. All right. So on the upside, we have continuation long above yesterday's high, value area high to target the overnight high. We're opening up within yesterday's range. If we open right here, if we get a move lower that cuts through settlement and the Globex open, first thing we're going to be on alert for is a look below and fail of the overnight low, a test of those single prints at 68.47. And do those act as support once again and hold price higher? Do buyers show up? Then we can, if they do, and that's the look, then we can look to trade it as a look below and fail of the overnight low. If that look below and fail fizzles out, or much less, if it fails to get through the open and it fails to get through settlement, then we can start looking for shorts to retarget that overnight low and even go test down into the single prints and maybe even value area low at 68.27. But more and more, I think this open is going to be really important. Let's make sure that we pay close attention to the opening print, because the one thing that's on my mind, that's the question that I'm most curious in having answered is this a V-type recovery, right? Are we going to move up into the all-time high and then just kind of test it up here, chop around maybe a little bit before moving higher and testing these upper trend lines? Because if we cut through this descending trend line with strength and momentum, then the target becomes 7,000. All right. Yep. So I think that pretty much frames out the day here. Let me know if you have any questions. Good morning, Phase 5. Glad to hear somebody's in here. That I was just talking to myself for a bit there. All right. So number one thing we want to focus in here, guys, on what's our opening print and what is the first move, right? Do we get that first 5 minute doji that kind of has us sitting on our hands, or do we get down there, test the settlement, test yesterday's volume point of control? Does that start to act as support? Then that would tell us that that would put all these buyers kind of in a wait and see position. These are I'm talking about the buyers that came in yesterday after the morning rip. So afternoon buyers, buyers from the low here, from the pullback low to test the single prints. Currently on the 15-minute, the 9-period moving average is acting as support, and prices just continues to hover right at yesterday's highs. So the more time we spend here, the greater the argument for higher prices. What we do have to be on alert for here is that we have on the clock on our time study, we are looking for, today is series S4H cycle day 3. I'll post that in the chart in the room. So on our time study, we're looking for an early morning high between somewhere in the time frame between 10:15 and 10:45. I shared this look with you guys yesterday. I want to just show you a review of yesterday's time study, or what the clock gave us yesterday. So as you can see, yesterday was S3L, right? So we were anticipating a low pivot between the time frame of 10:15 and 10:45. You can see that that's highlighted here in the yellow box, followed by a high between 11:20 and 12. That should be 12:15. Okay, so that's highlighted here in this yellow box. You can see that the high was put in on the tail end of that window, just as that window was closing. The price held the highs really nicely. We put in the lunchtime low between 12 and 1. That's marked here. And then we put in the afternoon high, which was basically a look above and fail of the early high, followed by our low pivot in the last hour, which came in a little bit early. So one thing that we have to also note is this was a similar pattern to yesterday, in that I'm not sure. So so yesterday we opened. Price was immediately weak, but held the pullback low. However, buyers were unable to get over or breach the early morning high, and that might have given bears an argument for lower prices, in that those buyers failed to follow through in the afternoon or for much of the day. However, what that ended up being was just a big bull flag, right? So you can see it really well here on the 4-hour. You get a more granular look. Let's go to the 2-hour. So you can see really good here, really easily, right? We came in, we have our flag. Price held the pullback low, which we highlighted yesterday. We had that trade that was really nice. We flagged, and then we broke out to the upside. All right. So now, coming into today, we have a lot of this. We have basically the same look, right? And that's why I'm starting to think, and we have to start considering that. Hey, is this going to take on a look of a V type recovery? I mean, it's pretty much a V thus far. And so here's our pole, and here's our flag. Interestingly enough, the flag is more of like a pennant formation, right? Where we have high to highs after that CPI print. No, actually, I would call it more of a megaphone, right? So we kind of have this megaphone look here, broadening top formation right at that descending trend line. We have to be on alert also for that trend line to be a trap, meaning price fades. Sellers think that it's holding and start to jump in, thinking that we put in a B top on the daily. So let's just be mindful of that. We know what we want, what we're looking for here. Let's watch the open and see where this takes us. Let me get the opening print here. Hang on. Remember, we're looking for a high in the 1015 to 1045 area. However, we're opening. Are we opening gap higher? It's tight. It's tight for sure. $68.75 is our opening print. Mark that down. Keep that on your radar. So we have value area high, yesterday's high, and the open and print all stacked within a 3 to 4 point range. Big level there. And do we chop at that level or do we break out with strength and momentum? I think we're going to find out right now. So let's focus in on the order flow. 68.75 was our open print. We made a low of 68.74 quarter, and thus far we've just been moving higher. So early signs here, super early, just 1 minute. Stay alert here, stay frosty. All right, let's take a look at our ATAs and see what those are giving us. We have an A7 here. Okay, so so let's take a look at that. Hang on. Let me just make sure I have my continuation long 68.58. Wait, yeah. Oh, we're way above that. So heads up on the trade plan, guys. I drafted the trade plan last night, and that was before we gapped higher. So you see that 68.58 held. That's supposed to be 68.68. All right, we're coming back in now. We're below yesterday's high, back below yesterday's high. So look out for that. Getting a little bit of a rejection. All right, we're back down through the open. So we opened at 68.75, traded up, traded higher, and then immediately pulled back. Let's take a look at the internals. On NYSE, we have 1.5 to 1 positive. NASDAQ 3.2 to 1 positive on the NASDAQ. The VIX is opening down 2%, gap down to 19. Crude is trading 98.20, 98.19. Our ticks are neutral. There were 173 contracts traded at the high, and both the bid and the offer were hit. So that is an incomplete auction up there. Just be mindful of that. We're likely to revisit that price at some point today, unless we get some type of thrusty news, momentous move. All right, we're back. We're below the first 5 minute open. We're below the first 5 minute low. Heads up on that. So the initial attempt to go up and test, yes, the overnight high has failed, and now let's see what we get. Prices coming back down to test that high pivot, the overnight high pivot at 68.69. Let's see what happens there. But ultimately, I think we're in for a test of the settlement down at 68.63 half. That's also lines up exactly with yesterday's volume point of control. So immediately a swift rejection up there. The first thing we have to start to consider is that daily trend line is holding. Stay alert up here. I'm also going to be interested in seeing if our early morning high, or if our early morning high pivot, is that a lower high relative to the opening drive higher? Okay. We're 6 minutes into the day. Prices testing on the 15-minute to 21 period moving average, which is sloped higher. See what we got here. Let's see if we test the settlement. Right, settlement lines up pretty well with that 21 period moving average, which is typically a good buy on a pullback on a trend day. Not saying that this is a trend day at all. Interestingly enough, it seems like the NASDAQ is strongest today, while the Russell is coming off pretty aggressively here, trading lower than the ES, than the comparable ES, based on the structure of the overnight move there. All right, 68.75 is our open print. So we traded higher, as high as we opened 68.75, traded up to 68.81. And what did price do? It came right back down through the open. So we've reeved it twice thus far. Now we have to be on alert for what? The dreaded chop, dreaded two-way movement. Let's see if this first 15-minute print can give us more than just a doji or a wide body look. Yep. Fading, fizzling out. That move is fizzling out. Couple things to consider here, guys. Can we get it back above the open? But the strongest thing that we have to consider is that descending trend line on the daily. Super choppy. The 24-hour VWAP is coming in at 68.66. See if we can get a test of the settlement. 68.35. Let's see. 68.63 is the settlement. Magister is short, 68.69. Good luck, Madge. Am I saying it right? Magister? Cool. Good to know. Thank you. Oh, shit. We have a low volume node at 68.74 quarter with only 384 contracts traded there. So heads up for that. Ah, it's a blend. Magic cash register. I wish I had one of those, but I like it though. That makes sense, right? Now it makes more sense to me. You got a magic cash register. Is the ES your magic cash register? All right. Thus far, price was unable to retest, the open print. So pretty choppy. Not going very far. Not going very far. We have a 14-point range. Again, let's keep in mind where we are in relative to the higher time frame. Okay, so we're at that descending trend line on the daily. We're opening up in the upper part of yesterday's distribution. En route to a test of the settlement at 68.63, which also lines up with yesterday's volume point of control. Be on alert here, guys. That descending trend line on the daily is holding. Okay, clip that. Um, so we have 68.63 for our settlement volume point of control. If we get below that, if we have a slight pop back up that fails to breach, all right, let's see. Looks like we have a somewhat of a good low here. So we came down in the on the 15-minute, tested that 21 period moving average to the tick. Thus far, it's held. Now let's see if we can. If price is unable to test yesterday's volume point of control or even the settlement, that's going to be telling. But either which way, we don't have very much strength or momentum in either direction. Definitely a sit on hands open here. 15 minutes in. Yeah, it's not going down very much, Danny. You're right about that. Yeah, definitely a sit on hands open here, guys. Be careful out there. Price not going very far. Again, we're looking for that AM high, whether it's going to be a higher high or a lower high. Not really sure, but what I do know is that we are holding above settlement. But on the open, we went above yesterday's high and came right back in. So technically, we have a look above and fail of yesterday's high en route to a test of the settlement down at 68.63 half. Not really seeing much to do here. I mean, we opened up. We're still in that 16-point range. Look above and fail of yesterday's high, but really no traction. Really no strong move. Not a strong move lower, right? So again, if we get below that the settlement and we can get there and get it to stick, then I think we can get short and target the overnight low, and we will have an entry window for that short in that 10:15 to 10:45 time frame. So that's what I'm looking for. Oh, the semis, right? Let's take a look. Let me take a look at. Oh, you said software. Sorry, I think it semiconductors. I was thinking last night. I wonder. I haven't looked at the semiconductor chart in quite a while. I better check it out. Here's a four chart look of Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, and Tesla. Um, Microsoft is the most interesting, coming back and testing this distribution right here. Nvidia has just been chopping, and for almost a year of just chop. I think you can remove these. Is there a software ETF? Oh wow, look at the semis, guys. Smoke into the upside. That's interesting. The Sox has been ripping on this move higher. Geez, I think that's a new all-time high for it. Hey, I'm glad I looked at this. That's a huge move higher. This is a weekly chart. Thanks, T Blizz. Internals 1.2 to 1 positive on the NYSE, 2.3 to 1 positive on the NASDAQ. Our ticks are still flat, with our high tick of the day being 400, low tick of the day being negative 200. That's kind of indicative of what we're seeing here, right? We're just seeing chop. We're chopping below the daily open, but we are above settlement, above yesterday's volume point of control. Until we get below that settlement and below the volume point of control, I'm go. I have to be long minded above there. If we get, I'm neutral. If we get below the volume point of control, One thing that I have to look for.
I'm not sure if I'm gonna need this information, but we did put money into Hippo last year.
Mm-hmm.
We might need that as a business investment.
Okay.
I'm just sort of, I don't know.
Phase five asks, can you repeat what your position is? All right, so phase, I put out some setups out in the morning, which are my levels for the day. So there's three different ways that I'm trading. I'm trading that trade plan that I posted. It should be up above. If you scroll up, you can see it there. So my next valid setup would be a support buy, a 68.38 or 68.58. Uh, this this trade plan is a bit skewed because I drew it up last night. Um, so that's my support buy if we break down right here in terms of what my read is right now. So okay, so let me finish off. So I'm trading that trade plan that I posted. I also am running the PTG ATAs here, which is an automated trade strategy. It's an automated algo that's trading based on a set of rules, not really based upon my read of the higher time frame and market. And you can see that that has a short on here at 68.68. Now, in terms of what I'm executing, as I said earlier, so we just came down and tested. So off the open, we looked above yesterday's high and failed and came right back in. If we would have been able to hold against above yesterday's high and build out some structure, I would have been long up there looking for the overnight high as the target, but that failed. So we came right back into range. I'm neutral while we're just oscillating below yesterday's high because the look above and fail could be in play, but it's not gaining any traction. And we still have to be long minded while we're above the settlement and above yesterday's volume point of control because we have all these buyers from yesterday here that are being positions are being held, right? So overnight, we had this kind of move higher on the CPI print. So if we get a move that takes us below the settlement, something like this, if we get below the settlement, pull back to it, and if it holds as resistance, then the target becomes the overnight low at 68.50 and these single prints at 68.47, which are right in here. Below there, I'm short. So if we come back, if we get to the overnight low, two things. If we get to the overnight low, look below and fail. If we get to the overnight low, look below it, and we reclaim the overnight low and start building time and value above it, then I'm looking to get long on the reclaim of the overnight low for a move to test up to the settlement. If we get below overnight low, we come back up and we're unable to get into the overnight range, then I'm short right here at the overnight low, looking for a move into those single print and to value area low at 68.27. If we get a move higher right now and we get above yesterday's high and we build out some structure up here where it's building time and value, then I'm getting long for a move to test to the overnight high, and hopefully my runner pays out somewhere up here. But we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place here, because we, on the daily time frame, you can see on the left hand chart, we have this big descending trend line which comes in today at 68.74, and price thus far has been unable to breach it. Okay, does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you heard that. Tough crowd. Tough crowd for sure. All right, we just tested the settlement at 68.63. The volume point of control is 68.63. We made a low at 68.6250, printed 13 contracts there, and immediately bounced 5 points. So heads up. All right, I'm out of that short here. I just trailed out. Looking for a high pivot somewhere in between 10:15 and 10:45. So is that high pivot a lower high relative to today's RTH high? I guess we'll find out. No predictions. That's the way I'm framing it out. Pretty straightforward if thens, right? So we just went down. We were looking for a test of the settlement, volume point of control. We got that. We printed 13 contracts at 62.50, bounced. Now let's see if that bounce takes us back up and gets us over the 24-hour volume point control 68.70, gets us back through the settlement. Sorry, not the settlement. If it can get us over value area high, and we have a cluster up here, value area high, yesterday's high, and the open print. But thus far, we opened, and all we've seen is a spike higher and nothing but lower prices. So you can see we had on the 15-minute, we had this bearish outside print, which then got follow through. We put in a tail. We ate up the tail, came down, tested the level, and now we're moving higher. So we outlined earlier that if we could stay above the settlement volume point of control, that we need to stay long-minded up here. And that's, at least that's what I'm thinking about. So if this support holds, we're stuck right here on this higher time frame resistance. So it's going to make things very dicey. Not an easy read here. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But if we get below here now, then I'm thinking short down to the overnight low and test those single prints at 68.47. We get back above yesterday's high, then I'm long, looking for a test of the overnight high. I'm not doing anything in between 68.75 and 68.6250. Yeah, the ambiguous trader. It's like when somebody says, "Yeah, I think we're gonna go higher. We're gonna go higher, but first we're gonna go lower. I think we're gonna go higher and lower." Nah, you've got a great sense of humor. All right, so again, we're not seeing that much of a thrusty move off the volume point of control in the settlement, guys. But we are trading, 5 points higher, which I guess for a 14-point range is is something. I mean, that's the reality of it. But look at this structure, though. Structure here, right? Came down, test the volume point, the Globex volume point of control, the settlement, and immediately bounced. We have some excess at the low, not very much. 5 ticks of excess. Everything we're seeing here, though, is just telling us, hey, this market is uh is indecisive up here at these highs. Yeah, I know it's a little bit ambiguous, but that's what it is, right? Oh shit. Crude popping. That was a that was a gnarly move yesterday from 100 down to 97. Coin flip here, but if I had to flip the coin, if I had to pick a side, I would say we're going higher. But I mean, that's just because where we're trading right now, we're above the settlement. So it's probably a 50-50 bet. Not going to make a ton of money on a 50-50 bet. You got to wait for better odds than that. Yeah, this thing is just unable to get any traction to the upside or to the downside. Yeah. Neutral is a position here. Neutral is the position. Coming back in again. All right, retesting the settlement. It seemed I don't just based on a tape read, right? Looking at the order flow, it seems like it, each pop is being sold into. So it's not like aggressive selling, more of like overhead supply. I mean, take that with a grain of salt. Popping. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of feels like a more of like a I don't know. It's kind of slow, right? Maybe like a summer Thursday or something. I don't know. All right, coming back up to yesterday's high. 68.76, yesterday's high. Get above there with strength and momentum. I think then we can target the overnight high. So I'm looking for that right here. Maybe a small probing order to see if it sticks. Tight stop, right? Risk like I don't know, 4 to 5 points on it. But we have to stay with this type of daily look, right? Even though we have that descending trend line, If you think about it, right? So we had thrusty move, 350-point move off the low, pulled back 150, pulled back. We had 300-point move off the low, pulled back 150 of it, and launched right into a descending trend line. Uh, and now we're just unable to get any traction lower. We traded lower, traded down to our most shallowest reference, yesterday's point of control, the overnight point of control, and yesterday's settlement, and it held as support. So there's not really much to read into that unless we can get above yesterday's high, get it to stick. Look, we just ran into value area high and the open, and we faded. Today's open print 68.75. That's the objective for bulls here. Our weighted AD is slightly negative. Core sector list. Let's go over a core sector list. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sectors red. Actually, 6 sectors red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sectors green. Mixed bag. Mr. Ambiguity strikes again. Nothing to see there. So when all things are equal like this, right? It's hard to gain. It's hard to make an argument for lower. I mean, we may not go higher. Neutral is certainly a position, but if this thing was going to cave, if we were going to trade lower, I think we would have seen signs of that already. Who knows? Today's an S4 day, so you never know what can happen. All right back up to yesterday's high. Testing yesterday's high. Looking for a move up to test the early high pivot at 68.8150. This thing's got, yeah, we're right back up here again. Okay, cool. Good. Probing orders are always authorized, as David would say. Probing orders. Target is that up there. Target that overnight point of control. Sorry, the overnight high. Overnight high is 68. Sorry, target is the early RTH high at 68.8150. So another scenario we have to consider is that we get up to the RTH high at 68.8150 and do a look above and fail there.
Good morning, Manny. Can you hear me? Do we have audio? Okay, Billy hears me. Thank you, Billy. All right, Manny must have it off. Billy, if you have an echo, it's probably because I'm on your platform twice. So look for my name and shut one of them off. Here you go. How did I know that? Because it happened to me in the very beginning. If you're watching Pit, and if you're watching, say,
Oh,
another room, it'll create an echo. So all you need to do is just make sure the audio is off on one of them. You online with us now, Manny?
I am. Sorry, I had you on red by accident. I didn't know you
Yeah.
were in here
No,
with me.
no, I
Thanks for
just
joining
came in.
us.
Just came in.
Okay,
Just came in. Didn't
good to
miss
know.
anything. Yeah, no, we were just. I'm pretty much done for the week. I'm fried. I get fried green tomatoes for a brain. Scrambled brains, as they say. All right, but it was a solid week, I guess you could call it that, considering everything. But yeah, we just kind of I call it the VWAP chop, kind of pattern here this morning. So it is a cycle day 3 for us, and in terms of the Taylor 3-day cycle, and cycle targets have certainly been well exceeded. And so when that happens, we just simply refer to the cycle day 3, which is today, as a wild card day in terms of direction. Um, and also Friday, it's Capital Preservation Day. So not really looking to push the envelope too much, but still looking for some clean trades. We got a couple this morning, one in A4 short, one in A10 long, and that was about it. So we decided to cut the stream early for an hour, and just kind of get in cruise control. So we wanted to see how the other half lived.
Yeah, so I love, I like Friday. I love Fridays. I feel for me at least, the entire week is just a build up for to get to Friday, and especially when, like you said, especially when you've had a solid week coming to Friday. Like the last thing I want to do is start pressing. Um, so I tend to be very trade very gingerly on a Friday. Again, so here's another thing about that, David, is like I never I've never traded as I've never traded MEF as much as I have in like the last 4 to 6 weeks. And so I'm trading that right now, and I'm finding that it's not as bad as what I used to think. I mean, there was a time when I wouldn't even touch them because like what it's not worth it. But I find that with MES, I can absorb a little bit more noise and build up a position. I find myself with like 15, 20 contracts on, but yeah, I'm giving some alpha up in terms of commissions, but I'm almost willing to pay for that on a Friday. So yeah, I've been getting a lot of use out of them lately.
Yeah, I've working my way into them more and more because they are a good way to manage risk a bit more. You know what I mean? Yeah. Initially, I got to say, at least in my own mind, that the trade-off, you need more range, you need more movement, right? To get paid for the effort. But when you kind of think about it, at the same time, you're able to manage your risk a little bit better and absorb, like you say, absorb, adverse, heat. Uh, since okay, I bought two, I bought three, but they're micros, and I mean, okay, I'm down $50 instead of $500.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat, that is, so it becomes a lot easier to, just kind of absorb that movement. And then also knowing that what I like about them, what I'm kind of learning more about is that if you go in small, just to kind of nibble, right? You don't have to, again, you don't have to be big, but you can, like in a heartbeat, boom, I'm buying 30, right? And so, it's like buying three, right? Or I'm buying 50, it's like buying five. You get, you can get up real fast to a position if you really wanted to that is equivalent, right? So, you have that. It's interesting because the way I kind of think about that is when I was younger, learning how to drive, um, my father had the car I learned how to drive was an Oldsmobile Dynamic 88. And again, if you
Oh.
go online and take a look at that, it's like a Sherman tank.
No, I
All
know.
right.
I know that car.
Had a big V8 engine, but it was never fast off the mark. I mean, you could floor it right off the mark, and it had a 4-barrel carburetor. It would just flood the carburetor, but it wouldn't, the transmission wouldn't really kick in like that, right? But right,
But you had to put
what,
some lead in that bad boy.
yeah, yeah. But so the idea though was, my father would say, sometimes you need to press the gas versus the brake in order to get out of a situation. So it's like today, and the analogy here would like having a Hemi engine, that's super responsive, not like that engine that was in that car, but having a Hemi engine, and but not needing it, in every situation. So you start off slow, you just kind of, but if you really need it, you could just punch it, and then boom, you're in, right? So kind of the way I look at it, like looking at micros, is like, okay, I'm going to buy, one or two, and it doesn't, it's insignificant in terms of, price action and so forth. Like, but like you said, you can build into a position and not be, I mean, how many times you start a position, one or two contracts, and it's like, down in your face against
Yeah.
you, right? And now you're left with not the thought of building the position, but now you're in defense. You're in that defensive mode. Should I bail out now, or is it just noise? Okay, so that's always, and I think that would be for everybody here. Perhaps everybody would agree. I don't think anybody would disagree. You all of a sudden, like, shit, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, maybe I should bail. And then all of a sudden the thought process totally changes, right? Of what you're trying to accomplish. Use micros though, your thought process doesn't go there. It says, okay, down a little bit. Okay, I'll buy a little bit more.
Yeah.
All right, back up. Okay, I'll buy a little more. So you're able to weather the kind of the dips, right? That may happen again. And that more likely going to happen against you, right? But then when the market starts finding a firm footing, and you're really, you've gone through that exploratory process of backing and filling, then you could say, all right, now the market's probably riper to go. All right, boom, I'm going to go buy five. I'm going to buy another half mini. Boom, I'm going to buy another five. Now I'm in a mini. And now you can build it real quick, much, uh, more confidently. And then when the market finally takes off, you maybe you have 30 or 40 of them, again, three or four contracts, right? 30 or 40 micros. And now, you've done the hard job of exploring, but now you're in, like as if you were having, started off with minis to begin with. Okay, so that's something that, I found useful in trading micros, is to, being able to weather those initial, counter moves against you when you're starting to build a position. So it keeps the mindset, focused on, okay, you want to build it here, build it here. you know. And yes, you can do one at a time on the micro, on the minis and so forth. I mean, you can still accomplish similar things, but if it affects you, mentally, um, micros can be useful, and so I used to think, though, it's like I'm not really going to make anything on them because I need more range. But at the same time, it actually, my thoughts have changed to, yeah, I could start small, but just change the contract and go boom 50, and I'm in on five right away. Yeah, you may have a little bit of slippage, perhaps. I don't know. I don't think so, but and so you can get to your positions, pretty quickly when needed,
You
but
know,
manage the risk a lot better.
so they definitely can't trade them on a rangy day, on a small range day. But what I like about them is, to your point, is so I enter with micros. I'm entering with a 60 tick stop, right?
Mm.
Just tons of room to work with. All right, hey, heads up, guys. Plus 5 points off of that long trade that we called out off yesterday's high. I'm looking for a tag of the overnight high now. So yeah, um, with the micros, so to your point about profit protection Fridays and so on, it's easier on a Friday. If I'm entering with a 60 tick stop, and I know that, okay, I have some wiggle room here. I know what I'm going to risk, what I'm willing to give back of the profit from the week to try to capture a little bit more, and that just gives me a another tool in the toolbox to try to capture some more alpha. And there was a time where I just didn't think that they were worth it, but now I see the utility in them.
Well, to John's point, John says here, John B says, I traded them for 3 months in my own real account. 3 months, the commissions just ate my profits. You're not missing anything there, John.
No.
There's the trade off. All right. There is obviously a trade off.
Yep.
The trade off is that with micros, you need more range, to make it worthwhile. See, that's the trade off. That's the, obviously, with on a I remember, when was it, the '09 financial crisis, '08, 7, I forget what, when the market was moving like 90 points at a clip,
Hmm.
right, 60, 70 point swings. Back then we didn't have micros, and I couldn't trade because it exceeded my pre-stated risk parameters. And so I sat there for many days and I just didn't trade. I couldn't because of my own rules, the way my risk parameters were set up. And so, I mean, I'm supposed that's a good thing. But at the same time, I said to myself back then, boy, wouldn't it be great, to trade like half a mini, half a mini. Didn't call them micros. I didn't even think about the name. I said, wouldn't it be great to have, trade a fractional mini? And I guess the universe heard me, because here we are having micros. So, that's the trade-off, John, is that you need more range, you know. And yes, the commissions on a percentage basis, can seem excessive, but you know, I think you just got to add that into your calculus in terms of, what trades are you taking. That's really where you need to kind of maybe consider. I don't have any core advice on how everybody's going to be different on how they want to use them, but really that's the core trade-off, is that you need more range, and but you're also benefiting by reduced risk profiles, you know. So
Yeah, so it's certainly not going to, like I say, trading the micros is not going to pay the mortgage, but it'll certainly, buy some groceries. And like David said, so think about it like this also. So say that it's like trading your personal account versus trading a funded prop account, right? Yeah, with a funded prop account, you're giving up some of your profits in terms of what the cost for the evaluation was, any resets, and also the profit split. However, your personal funds stay liquid and are not touched. So there's a trade-off there. And on days like today, if you've done well for the week and you're okay participating and not gaining too much on the upside, also not giving up too much on the downside, if you can catch them right and get them to stick, they can pay out well. I mean, with 2 weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I made like 4K on a micro trade, which I just, it was all in, all out. I didn't scale anything. I held them, and I held them from the early morning to the afternoon and didn't touch them. I didn't scale them, and they paid off nicely. I mean, it was an easy trade. There weren't very many pullbacks to make me second guess my position. But had I not been in that trade, because I wouldn't have taken that trade, that entry with the mini. I was kind of in profit protect mode. I don't remember exactly the context, but I certainly wasn't in looking for a I wasn't looking to execute, like a chunky trade for my P&L for the week. I was just looking, okay, well, I see the setup. Let me see if it works or not, but I don't want to risk a ton on it. And I happened to get lucky.
Well, to your point, yeah, that's the whole idea is when if you have your type of trades, you like to stay in them for distances. You're not in and out, you're not, scalping, those type of things. You're in it, you're picking a level, holding it. I want, 20, 30, 40 handles, whatever that is. That's what you're kind of looking for, that with the potential for that on that particular day. So those type of trades, micros are really good for, because to John's point about commissions, I mean, you make 4 grand on a micro. I mean, who cares about the commissions? That's where you make it up. It's that if your style is you're kind of in and out a lot, all right, then no, micros makes 0 sense,
Yeah.
because you're just going to get wiped out, in commissions, right? Brokers love it, and that's why they call them brokers. Uh, but they make you broker. Um, but no, in reality, though, I mean, that's where you have to, just have to decide if they're worth it to you in your style and your plan. That's all. It's just another tool.
Yep.
That's the way I look at it. Just another tool to manage your risk. And again, if it's your style where you hold like you do, then it makes a lot of sense. And whereas the other way it doesn't.
John B, here's another thing that might help you. So typically I love the setup, the look below and fail. I'm not sure if you know what that setup is. If you don't, let me know. I'll go through that. But in the interest of brevity, so on a look below and fail, I'm definitely trading that setup with minis. As soon as we get the reclaim, I know that's going to be a thrusty move. However, on the reclaim of the level, I don't know if that move is just going to reclaim and then reverse and take out the prior pivot low. So I want to make sure that I'm in profit. Like I hit that 5 and 10 point target. Like those are always my first two targets. So I want to make sure that I can get paid that 750 on those two contracts if that's what I'm in, and then potentially a runner. And if that runner stops out at break even, then I'm up 750, and that's good enough for me on that trade. However, if I'm executing a trade like something like this, where I'm in range and the tape is kind of telling me, hey, we're not going to get a thrusty move, then I'll pivot to micros. And again, I want to be clear. The one thing is that I just started using them, like I said, like 4 to 6 weeks ago, and I'm finding different ways of how to use them. Whereas, a year ago, I wouldn't even entertain it. I just didn't think I would be able to make enough money on it and kind of sit through the same turmoil of being in that trade. I wanted to get paid. And that's the thing with minis, right? You can hit, you can hit your first two targets, and at least for me, if I have, a trade that goes my first two targets, I with two of those a day, I'm probably not going back to the well that day. It's 1,500 minus commissions. Unless something's really good, I'm probably just going to uh, play it small, or not trade at all. Whereas now, maybe I'll put on a 3 to 5 micro position, and scalp it for $100, $200, whatever the commissions are. They are right. And then what I'm hoping to see is over time, see what those micro trades. How many of my losers do those little micro trades pay for? Kind of stalling out here a little bit, guys. Again, we're back. We're just above that descending trend line on the daily.
I don't know, Manny. I never thought you were a small ball player.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm a little bit surprised myself, but so you had a good week, huh?
Yeah, I've been dry for a long time,
That's good to hear.
struggling just kind of back and forth. Finally get something, and so as you and I have discussed in the past, Fridays is not my uh highest, best day. So
Yeah.
so that's
Look at
why
that.
again
So
I have it. I have it a rule of capital preservation. Something just happened.
yep.
Something just whipped around here.
Heads up. Crew to flying.
Yeah, they get something going on live squawk.
Yeah. Spain's. Let's see.
Yeah.
It looks like the parliament leader, Iran's parliament leader, says two of the measures mutually agreed upon between the parties have yet to be implemented: a ceasefire in Lebanon and the release of Iran's blocked assets prior to the commencement of negotiations. Looks like they want those two matters squared away before they're going to
Oops.
agree to a
Wrong,
ceasefire. So
wrong
just be careful
upload.
here. This is a headline minefield.
Wrong upload. Sorry. Yeah, I have live squawk on in the background. But even still, the market's going to react faster than even live squawk can report. So that's why we have stops. But I'm not in a position. So how many of you here don't use live stops on the book? All right, nobody's going to raise their hand. Nobody wants to admit it. Nobody wants to admit it.
Yeah, it happens
All
to
right.
me. I won't lie. It does. There have been times where I see the level, I see the setup, and I didn't have the OCO loaded, and I enter the position, and then I turn away for a moment. I realize, oh shit, I don't have a stop in.
Yeah.
But typically, I'm pretty good about getting that put in fairly quickly. I'll never like intentionally leave a position without a stop, like even to go to the bathroom. But there are
Yeah.
times when Uh, there are
So,
times when I
so
when it
kind of
happens.
stops come in different categories, I suppose, right? I mean, I'm always, I always have a max stop kind of disaster stop. And by the way, stops in the futures markets, by the way, everybody, if you didn't really know it, they're not guaranteed. All right. I mean, in that at your level, okay, because during the flash crash way back when, I mean, stops, yes, they did get executed. So, I mean, in one sense, stops are executable, but they're not necessarily executable at the level that necessarily were looking to get stopped out at. Flash crash proved that. I mean, some people had stops in, and they got stopped in like multiple dollars, right?
Their stops got blown through. You mean right?
Not only blown through, but like, and I mean, enough where they had debits in their accounts,
Well,
after the stops. Right. I mean, they did get stopped, but nothing like getting stopped. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is like if you have a stop order at say, I don't know, whatever, 68.60 here, right below these lows, and some news comes out like a flash crash type thing, you're not assured to get a 68.60 or even a 68.55, execution. I mean, you could get it, 67, 100 points lower. I mean, it's just that's kind of what happened in the flash crash. What year was that? '06 or something or whatever.
oh
But
nine, I think. Yep, oh nine.
yeah, whatever it was that's what happened. And people, so just that. And I mean, in normal conditions, yeah, stops are going to, be honored, at or near to the level you have your stop. But just for way of edification, they are guaranteed, but they're not guaranteed to the price area that you place them. So there's something kind of to keep in mind. But I always have a disaster stop in place, like kind of a max risk stop. I don't want to get, you know, have my stop too tight. And again, in the way I kind of do things, I'm not in my position all in at once. In most cases, I kind of blend into a position. Right. Some cases I'm all in, depends on the strategy. But the general kind of action is to work into a trade, as we were discussing even with like the micros, but work into a trade. And that way I'm not at full risk all the way. And yes, I'm not at full position. If it works, well, I could get into a position faster. But again, if I'm not into a full position that I'm trying to build into and it works out, well, then okay, yeah, I don't have the full. I love it when I get into a trade, and this is very rare naturally, but I love it when I get into a trade and I'm not in, in my entire trade, just kind of like I'm just going to nibble on one or two, and then all of a sudden, it jumps and you have like an immediate profit, and hits my target, but I'm not in a full position. I'm just in a partial position. I'm very happy when that happens. I call that blackjack. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll take that all day long rather than just kind of working into a trade. You know. Yeah. Yeah. So Marlon says here, stops will trigger at your price. Again, they will trigger. Yes, absolutely. And if you have a market stop, right, it will fill at the market price. Yes. But that's maybe nowhere near your trigger price. Exactly. Right. And if you have a stop limit, you're screwed. Right. Yeah, it might never fill. That's what I was saying, right, in terms of that. So, yes, it will trigger, but because it goes to the market, you could be thinking, "Oh, I should have gotten stopped out, near to that limit, that to that level," but that's not always going to be the case, and particularly on those crazy wild days.
Thus far, we have internals are still basically flat, 1-to-1 positive on the NYSE, 1.7-to-1 positive on the Nasdaq. But we have a 20-point range here, guys. We're not doing much of anything. I mean, yep, Rev. It looks like we're carving out that early AM high here. So next pivot we have is a low about 11:40, somewhere between 11:20, 11. I would call 11 and 12 o'clock. Center time is 11:20, 11:15. Yep, advanced decline is flat.
Do you folks in PTG hear me as well?
The weighted AD is
Peter
pretty
does.
much it's
Okay.
slightly negative.
Okay, you
And
guys do hear me. Okay,
that
'cause
as
I'm
well.
talking to Manny in the other room. I didn't know if you guys were still hearing me or not. I thought I had you guys on. Okay.
Right back up to yesterday's high.
All right. Another choppy day on the opening range. We got stopped out so far on both NQ and crude oil. This range action just does not play well on the opening range strategies that we have. Just not enough expansion.
Yeah, we've weaved the open quite a few times. I remember yesterday was like something like 20 times. Um, but we're holding highs here, so let's see if we get into and test those single prints from yesterday. Any move lower that even gets close to, but we'll first need is to get below the settlement. But as we framed earlier, if we can get below the volume point of control in the settlement at 68, 63, then we can expect the test of the overnight low at 68.50, and those single prints are just below at 68.47. I'd like to take a shot on that reclaim if we get down there, especially if we have time alignment.
So for everybody in the pit room, uh, you know, coming attractions here next week on Wednesday. Put it on your calendar. Wednesday at noon, between noon Eastern time and 1:30, we have some couple great new contributors. Danny and Lauren will be their show on Wednesdays at noon, between noon and 1:30 Eastern time. They'll be discussing a variety of topics, but Lauren is kind of her expertise is in the agriculture, feeder cattle type areas, those type of commodity areas. And then Danny will be talking about kind of trader psychology stuff, which is really I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
on both of their presentations. So they'll be slotted every Wednesday going forward at between 12 and 1:30. So we're still working on, kind of making sure our programming calendar is solid. Okay, so and you'll know, and we'll be publishing it at some point soon. The actual schedule, so everybody has um, knows what days various presenters and time slots they'll be presenting. Today on a Friday is kind of a open mic uh, day, so anybody can kind of come in from any area and join in the fun. But yeah, so next Wednesday, 12 to 1:30 Eastern. Mark it on your calendars. That will be the inaugural day, and for Danny and Lauren to join up in the pit room. So how many viewers do you get, Peter? Meaning what, in the pit room, or we're growing? All right, we're certainly growing. Yeah, so we're growing. All right, I mean the pit room area, Pitbull Trader Funding area is certainly growing, and it's accelerating. So um, we have a Mr. Top Step and PTG and a couple of the other uh, already established rooms have an established following, and of course, many of them are joining in and watching what we do here in the pit. And again, as we continue to expand that program out, that initiative, we certainly anticipate more and more people coming in uh, to see what we're doing and how we're doing things. So we're just we're still in our infancy stage here, baby steps. But as we get our voice and our rhythms, just like any other project, you got to start off slow, make sure you get everything in place, all the facets. It's there's a lot. There's more than I originally thought that goes into this, but um, yeah, we're working our best to give you guys the best programming out there. So, and with Lauren and Danny coming on board, we're expanding kind of the areas. I mean, most of us here are NQ, crude oil, ES traders. I mean, that's kind of what it's been forever. We get some bond traders plays, but we don't. Nobody really talks about that, right? So we don't really have any visibility there. I used to trade ags years ago, and again, not too well, but I used to dabble in it, and I just didn't understand the whole complex, of everything. And so when you don't have that knowledge, you know, you're the clay pigeon, right? So I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about that, and so we're trying to open up avenues of different topics and areas where uh, you may find success in your own trading. Yeah, so that's kind of what the program's all about. Is it bringing in contributors? Rev in here. Rev is like our resident crude oil expert. All right, so Rev's going to be doing, uh, he's already talking about stuff in crude oil, and of course that is so relevant right now, and it'll always be. So, if you want to learn more about crude oil and what happens there, not just price action that we do here, just the core price action, but really getting an understand of how, what's behind a lot of these moves and understanding it in a deeper way. So that's what we're trying to do with a lot of these contributors. It's not just all straight technical analysis stuff. You know, uh, do you know what platform they use for trades? Meaning, who's they? Danny and Lauren? Is that what you're asking about? I don't know who you're asking about. And who are they? Oh, Pitbull. Yeah. So I am working with Sierra Chart at the moment. Okay. I just recently got that running, and that is kind of making sure that that's stable. So far it seems to be. I think Tradeovate, Manny, maybe you want to help me on that. Tradeovate, I think, is also we're having a few issues with Ninja Trader at the moment. Yeah, it's Rhythmic. Rhythmic is a is an offering in terms of data. And then what's the other one? DX?
Yeah, DX feed. We have
Yeah,
DX feed
I'm
and
not familiar with
Rhythmic
that one.
data, which both I've traded on both. I've tested both. They're
Right.
both great. They're both. I couldn't tell the difference that I was on one versus the other. Uh,
Yeah,
so
so like on NinjaTrader, like I can access everything with the Rhythmic on NinjaTrader, but apparently there's something with NinjaTrader where some folks are having difficulty with. So we're trying to work out the technical aspect of why some people can't, for some reason, access Ninja and others can. So that's kind of a technical issue we're working through. But yeah,
yeah,
Rhythmic, and then there's DX feed. But Rhythmic will be the one I think it's the most popular for everyone. So that's available, and that's what I use, testing it out.
yeah. So we're
So
every day we're adding more front end platforms, meaning more kind of what I mean by front end is what you trade on. So Ninja Trader, Delta Trader, things of that nature, deep charts. We're adding different platforms every day. Like as David just said, we just added deep charts, and we have Delta Trader, and we're in the process of adding Trade of 8. Each one of these is kind of a process to add. It's not as simple as like David said. It's been a lot of work. It's not as easy as we thought, but we are continue to expand the offering. And every day, as David said, we have a meeting scheduled next week with Ninja Trader to get that kind of sorted out. That's kind of been our focus, to try to get Ninja Trader plugged in. So stay tuned for more news on that.
what is going on? All right. Guys, I got to shut down my system for some reason. I don't know. Something's going wacko here.
Yeah, so my screen froze too. I'm just trying to sort that out here too.
Monitor
Hang on.
configuration. No, it's my Windows. Something's really messed up on my Windows. Huh, I don't know what I did. I think I touched something by mistake. Yeah, everything's messed up. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. At least I don't have the blue screen of death. Oh no. Guys, I'm gonna shut down. I don't know if you can still hear me, but I'm gonna shut down. I'll be back in just a few minutes. I have to hard shut down.